The Estonian War of Independence, also known as the Estonian Liberation War, was a defensive campaign of the Estonian Army and its allies, most notably the White Russian Northwestern Army, Latvia, and the United Kingdom, against the Soviet Western Front offensive and the aggression of the Baltische Landeswehr. It was fought in connection with the Russian Civil War during 1918 to 1920. The campaign was the struggle of Estonia for its sovereignty in the aftermath of World War I. It resulted in a victory for the newly established state and was concluded in the Treaty of Tartu. Preface. In November 1917, upon the disintegration of the Russian Empire, a Diet of the Autonomous Governorate of Estonia, the Estonian Provincial Assembly, which had been elected in the spring of that year, proclaimed itself the highest authority in Estonia. Soon thereafter, the Bolsheviks dissolved the Estonian Provincial Assembly and temporarily forced the pro-independence Estonians underground in the capital Tallinn. A few months later, using the interval between the Red Army's retreat and the arrival of the Imperial German Army, the Salvation Committee of the Estonian National Council Marpev issued the Estonian Declaration of Independence in Tallinn on 24 February 1918 and formed the Estonian Provisional Government. This first period of independence was extremely short-lived, as the German troops entered Tallinn on the following day. The German authorities recognized neither the Provisional Government, nor its claim for Estonia's independence, counting them as a self-styled group usurping sovereign rights of the Baltic nobility. Course of the war. After the German Revolution, with the capitulation of Imperial Germany, between the 11th and the 14th of November 1918, the representatives of Germany formally handed over political power to the Estonian Provisional Government. On the 16th of November the Provisional Government called for voluntary mobilization and began to organize the Estonian Army, with Konstantin Pats as Minister of War, Major General Andres Laka as the Chief of Staff, and Major General Alexander Tunnisson as Commander of the Estonian Army, initially consisting of one division. Soviet westward offensive. On the northern wing of the Soviet westward offensive of 1918-1919, on 28 November 1918, the 6th Red Rifle Division attacked units of the Estonian Defence League and the German Infantry Regiment near 405 deployed in the defence of the border town of Narva. This marked the beginning of the Estonian War of Independence. The 6th Red Rifle Division captured the city on 29 November, with their 7,000 infantry, 22 field guns, 111 machine guns, an armoured train, 2 armoured vehicles, 2 airplanes, and the Bogata-class cruiser Oleg supported by 2 destroyers. The infantry regiment near 405 thereafter withdrew westwards. The 2nd Novgorod Division opened a second front south of Lake Peipus, where the division had 7,000 infantry, 12 field guns, 50 machine guns, 2 armoured trains, and 3 armoured vehicles. The Estonian military forces at the time consisted of 2,000 men with light weapons and about 14,500 poorly armed men in the Estonian Defence League. The end of November 1918 saw the formation of the Baltic Battalion, primarily a mounted machine gun company plus infantry. Estonia's Baltic German minority provided a sizable troop of volunteer militia. Thus, the battalion belonged to the first fighting units of the Estonian Army, demonstrated and maintained staunch allegiance and loyalty to authority vested in the Republic. This contrasts with the Baltische Landeswehr in Latvia. On Christmas Eve the 6th Red Rifle Division captured the Tapa railway junction, advancing to within 34 kilometers of the nation's capital Tallinn. Estonian Bolsheviks declared the Estonian Workers' Commune in Narva. The 49th Red Latvian Rifle Regiment took Valga railway junction on 18 December and the city of Tartu on Christmas Eve. By the end of the year, the 7th Red Army controlled Estonia along the front line 34 kilometers east of Tallinn, west from Tartu and south of Ainaži. Colonel Johan Laidoner, who was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Estonian Armed Forces, recruited 600 officers and 11,000 volunteers by the 23rd of December, 1918. He reorganized the forces by setting up the 2nd Division in southern Estonia under the command of Colonel Victor Puska, along with commando-type units, such as the Tartu Maa Partisan Battalion and Kalevi Malev. The national government obtained foreign assistance. On 5 December, Finland delivered 5,000 rifles and 20 field guns along with ammunition. The Royal Navy Squadron, commanded by Rear Admiral Sir Edwin Alexander Sinclair, arrived off Tallinn on 31 December, delivering 6,500 rifles, 200 machine guns and 2 field guns. The squadron captured 2 Russian destroyers, Spartak and Avtroil, and turned those over to Estonia, which renamed them Vambola and Lenuk. On 2 January, Finnish volunteer units with 2,000 men arrived in Estonia. 3 armoured trains were built in Tallinn under the command of Captain Anton Erv. Liberation of Estonian territory. By the beginning of 1919, the Estonian army had increased its ranks to a total of 13,000 men, with 5,700 on the front facing 8,000 Soviets. The strengthened Estonian army stopped the 7th Red Army's advance in its tracks between 2 and 5 January 1919 and went on the counter-offensive on 7 January. Tapa was liberated 2 days later in a campaign highlighted by the implementation of the highly successful Sumisrongid. This turn of events was swiftly followed by the liberation of the sizable town of Rakvere on 12 January. In liberating Narva, a 1,000-strong Finnish-Estonian force landed at Utria to the rear of the Soviet 6th Rifle Division on 17 January. In so doing, retreat eastward for the Soviet forces was precluded. The following day Narva was liberated. Consequent to this, the northeastern front stabilized along the Narva River. Within 11 days, the 1st Division had advanced 200 kilometers. In the southern sphere of conflict, Tartu was liberated through the rapid deployment of armored trains and the Tartu Maa Partisan Battalion. The 2nd Division continued to advance southwards, facing increasing Soviet resistance. In the Battle of Paju, the Tartu Maa Partisan Battalion and the Finnish volunteers drove the Latvian riflemen out of Valga on 31 January. The 7th Red Army was routed outside the boundaries of contemporary Estonia, and the battlefront continued outwards into the ancient, historical Estonian settlement area. The second half of February saw the Estonian southward advance capture Salakriva and Alūksne. This advance was soon stopped by a Soviet build-up ostensibly for a new expansionist offensive into Estonia. On the first Independence Day of 24 February 1919, the pro-independence Estonian forces on the front consisted of 19,000 men, 70 field guns, and 230 machine guns. Estonia had become the first country to repel the Soviet westward offensive. In the second half of February, the Red Armies started the new Soviet offensive to capture Estonia. To this end, the Soviets established what was referred to as the new Estonian Red Army. This sizable force consisted upwards of 80,000 conscripts. In positions along the Narva River, the Estonian 1st Division and their allied White Russian Northern Corps repelled the 7th Red Army's attacks. The Red Army heavily bombarded Narva, leaving about 2,000 people homeless, yet ultimately failed to capture the city. The majority of Soviet forces were concentrated at and along the southern front. The so-called Estonian Red Army captured Alūksne, Setomaa, Varsselino, and Rapina parishes by 15 March. Having received reinforcements, the Estonian 2nd Division counterattacked and regained Petseri by 29 March. Subsequently, the Estonian Red Army was pushed behind the Opjok River. On 27 March, the Estonian 3rd Division was deployed along the western flank of the southern front under the command of Major General Ernst Podder. At Voru, the situation became critical on the 22nd of April when the Estonian Red Army approached to within 1.5 kilometers of the town. Heavy fighting continued at the southeastern front up to the first half of May. On the 25th of April, the Latvian riflemen captured Rūjiena, but were soon pushed back by the 3rd Division to Salakgrīvas-Ādagožā line. Formation of foreign units. On 5–7 April 1919 the Estonian Constituent Assembly was elected. The elections were won by the left and centre parties. The 120 members of the Constituent Assembly met at the opening session on the 23rd of April, and elected Social Democrat August Rei as chairman. The Provisional Government retired, and a new government headed by Otto Strandman was formed. On 4 June the Assembly adopted a temporary constitution of Estonia. On 10 October the Land Reform Act was passed, which confiscated and redistributed the large Baltic German estates that covered more than half of the territory of Estonia. Estonia actively helped to organize White Russian, Latvian and Ingran forces on the territory of the Republic. The White Russian Northern Corps had been organizing in Estonia since December 1918. On 18 February, an agreement was signed between Estonia and Latvia, which allowed formation of Latvian forces under Estonian command, but using them only on the southern front. The North Latvian Brigade under the command of Georgios Zemetins was formed from the citizens of Latvia who had fled to Estonia. In March 1919, an agreement was signed with the Ingran National People's Committee for the formation of an Ingran battalion. By May 1919, there were 6,000 Russians, 4,000 Latvians and 700 Ingrans in their respective national units. Offensives into Russia and Latvia. Although the Estonian army had attained control over its country, its opposite Red armies were still active. The Estonian High Command decided to push their defense lines across the border into Russia in support of the White Russian Northern Corps. On 13 May, the Northern Corps went on the offensive at Narva, catching the Soviets by surprise and destroying their 6th Division. The offensive was supported along the Gulf of Finland's coast by the British and Estonian Navy and Marines. With the front approaching, the garrison of the Krasnaya Gorka fort mutinied. But the 7th Red Army received reinforcements and counterattacked, pushing the White Russians back, until the front was stabilized with the support from the Estonian 1st Division on the Luga and Saba rivers. The offensive of the Estonian Petseri battle group began on 24 May. On the same day 1st Estonian Communist Regiment of 600 troops together with Leonhard Ritt, commander of the Estonian 1st Rifle Division, switched sides. Offensive destroyed the Estonian Red Army, captured Pskov on 25 May and cleared the territory between Estonia and the Velika Yar River of Soviet forces. A few days later White Russian forces arrived in Pskov, but as they were unable to defend the town on their own, some Estonian forces remained in Pskov, while the rest were pulled back to the state border. The Northern Corps mobilized members of the local population in the Pskov region. On 19 June 1919, the Estonian Commander-in-Chief General Johan Laidoner rescinded his command over the White Russians, and they were renamed the Northwestern Army. Shortly afterwards, General Nikolai N. Yudenich took command of the troops. Simultaneously with the Pskov offensive, Estonian 2nd and 3rd Divisions also started southward offensive into northern Latvia. By end of May they had captured Luksna and Valmiera. Due simultaneous German-Latvian offensive in western Latvia, situation was becoming very difficult for the Soviets. On 31 May, Estonian Cavalry Regiment led by Gustav Jonsson reached Gulbena, capturing large amount of rolling stock, including 2 armored trains. Rapid offensive of 2nd Division, spearheaded by its cavalry regiment, continued, and on 6 June it crossed Daugava River and captured Jekapels. But 3rd Division could not support advance of 2nd Division anymore as it was now facing a new enemy. The Baltische Landeswehr. War against the Landeswehr. The war against the Baltische Landeswehr broke out on the southern front in Latvia on 5 June 1919. The Latvian Democrats, led by Kārlis Ulmanis, had declared independence like in Estonia, but were soon pushed back to Liepaja by Soviet forces, where the German 6th Reserve Corps finally stopped their advance. This German force, led by General Rudiger von der Goltz, consisted of the Baltische Landeswehr, formed from Baltic Germans, the Guards Reserve Division of former Imperial German Army soldiers who had stayed in Latvia, and the Freikorpseiern Division of volunteers motivated by prospects of acquiring properties in the Baltics. This was possible because the terms of their armistice with the Western Allies obliged the Germans to maintain their armies in the east to counter the Bolshevist threat. The 6th Reserve Corps also included the 1st Independent Latvian Battalion led by Oskars Kalpaks, which consisted of ethnic Latvians loyal to the Provisional Government of Latvia. The Germans disrupted the organization of Latvian national forces, and on 16 April 1919 the Provisional Government was toppled and replaced with the pro-German puppet Provisional Government of Latvia led by Andrievs. Niedra. Ulmanis took refuge aboard the steamship Saratau, under Entente protection. The 6th Reserve Corps pushed the Soviets back, capturing Riga on 23 May, continued to advance northwards, and demanded that the Estonian army ended its occupation of parts of northern Latvia. The real intent of the 6th Reserve Corps was to annex Estonia into a German-dominated puppet state. On 3 June, Estonian General Laidoner issued an ultimatum demanding that German forces must pull back southwards, leaving the broad-gauge railway between Iiriki and Gulbena under Estonian control. When Estonian armoured trains moved out on 5 June to check compliance with this demand, the Baltische Landeswehr attacked them, unsuccessfully. The following day, the Baltische Landeswehr captured CESIs. On 8 June, an Estonian counterattack was repelled. First clashes demonstrated that the 6th Reserve Corps was stronger and better equipped than the Soviets. On 10 June, with Entente mediation, a ceasefire was made. Despite the Entente demand for the German force to pull behind the line demanded by the Estonians, von der Goltz refused and demanded Estonian withdrawal from Latvia, threatening to continue fighting. On 19 June, fighting resumed with an assault of the Iron Division on positions of the Estonian 3rd Division near Limbaži and Straupa, starting the Battle of CESIs. At that time, the 3rd Estonian Division, including the 2nd Latvian CESIs Regiment under Colonel Krišjānis Burkus, had 5,990 infantry and 125 cavalry. Intensive German attacks on Estonian positions continued up to the 22nd of June, without achieving a breakthrough. On the 23rd of June, the Estonian 3rd Division counterattacked, recapturing CESIs. The anniversary of the Battle of CESIs is celebrated in Estonia as the Victory Day. The Estonian 3rd Division continued their advance towards Riga. On 3 July, when the Estonian forces were at the outskirts of Riga, a ceasefire was made on the demand of the Entente and the Ulmanis government was restored in Riga. The German forces were ordered to leave Latvia. The Baltische Landeswehr was put under the command of the Latvian Provisional Government and sent to fight against the Red Army. However, to circumvent Entente's orders, the troops of the disbanded 6th Reserve Corps, instead of leaving, were incorporated into the West Russian Volunteer Army, officially hired by the German puppet government of Latvia and led by Pavel Bermondt-Avalov. In October, fighting restarted when the West Russian Volunteer Army attacked Riga. Following the Latvian request to help, Estonia sent 2 armoured trains to aid repelling the German attack. Estonian army also remained to support the defence of Latvia against Soviets by defending the front north of Lake Lubins. final battles and peace negotiations. Soviet Russia had been attempting to conclude a peace since the spring of 1919. On 25 April 1919, Hungarian communists offered to mediate a settlement between the Bolsheviks and the Estonians. But Admiral Cowan threatened withdrawal of support to the Estonians unless they rejected the Hungarian offer. The Russians then publicly broached the subject of peace talks in a radio broadcast on 27 and 28 April. On 5 June the Estonian Commune was abolished. A subsequent broadcast by the Russians on 21 July led to the British journalist Arthur Ransom sounding out the Commissar for Foreign Relations, Georgy Chicherin, on the subject of peace talks. As a result, the Soviet government made a formal offer for negotiations on 31 August 1919. The Estonians accepted on 4 September, and delegations started talks on 16 September. Estonia then proposed to stop the negotiations until Latvia, Lithuania and Finland have agreed to participate in joint negotiations. In the autumn, the Northwestern Army launched Operation White Sword, a major effort to capture Petrograd. With the arms provided by Britain and France, and the operational support by the Estonian Army, Estonian Navy, and Royal Navy, the Northwestern Army began the offensive on 28 September 1919. Estonia supported the Northwestern Army due to the demands of the Entente. The Estonian forces made joint naval and land attacks against the Krasnaya Gorka fort, while the Estonian 2nd Division attempted to destroy bridges over the Velika Jõe River, and the Estonian 3rd Division attacked towards Pytalovo. The Northwestern Army approached to 16 kilometers from Petrograd, but the Red Army repulsed the White Russian troops back to the Narva River. Distrustful of the White Russians, the Estonian High Command disarmed and interned the remains of the Northwestern Army that retreated behind the state border. The 7th and 15th Soviet armies, advancing behind collapsing White Russian forces, continued to attack the fortified positions at the state border near Narva. First clashes took place on Luga River on 16 November, starting the conclusive battles with 120,000 Soviets facing 40,000 Estonians. After repeated attacks, the 7th Red Army managed to achieve some limited success. At the end of November, the situation on the front calmed, as the Soviets needed to replenish their forces. In order to pressure Estonia in the peace talks, intensive Soviet attacks restarted on 7 December. On 16 December, the situation became critical as forward units of the 15th Red Army crossed the Narva River. The next day, an Estonian counterattack pushed the Soviets back. The Estonian High Command actively reinforced the 1st Division at Narva during the battles, sending in the headquarters of the 3rd Division. General Tönnissen became commander of the Võru front. After suffering 35,000 casualties in heavy battles, the Red Army was completely exhausted by the end of December. On 19 November, the new government of Jan Tönnissen decided to restart talks with Soviet Russia, even without the participation of other Baltic states. Negotiations began on 5 December, with the main point of dispute being territorial issues. Talks continued through December, with both sides pressing their territorial demands, while heavy fighting continued at Narva. The peace treaty was finally concluded on 31 December 1919, and the ceasefire came into effect on 3 January 1920.